Happy New Year's Eve, everyone! So finally, after 2 weeks, here is my long-delayed spoiler review for Star Wars The Last Jedi. I've seen it 2 more times after I did my spoiler-free review, and now we come to the spoiler-filled review. I've had a couple reasons why this has been delayed, one of which is because the holidays have just been so crazy with family, and doing those 5 Christmas movie reviews in a row really made things a lot busier for me. But the other reason I felt like I had to delay the review is because this fandom, I have not in a long time seen a fan base so divided and so toxic, mainly from the negative side, than with Star Wars The Last Jedi, because this thing is, amongst audiences, is probably the most divisive Star Wars movie ever. Critics love it, critics give it a fantastic score, but the Star Wars fans are just... They make me feel like Ryan Gosling in The Notebook. When we get The Force Awakens, it's closer to a Star Wars movie than the prequels were, but people are like, oh, it's too similar to Star Wars. And then with The Last Jedi, it's like, okay, we finally get a Star Wars movie that's kind of fresh and new and goes in a different direction. It's not a repeat of Empire Strikes Back. And then we get people whining about how it's too different. And I'm like, what do you want? I've gotten to arguments with a bunch of these fans before, and I'll just say this. Whether or not you agree with me or disagree with me on a movie, at least have the courtesy to respect an opinion. Now, that sounds pretty hypocritical for me because I've been on record saying that if you like Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, then you're an idiot. But I kind of do that for the sake of entertainment. The reality is, and especially since I've been doing these movie reviews, I don't care what your opinion on a movie is. I'll never understand why people love the Transformers movies. I'll never understand why people love Batman vs. Superman. I'll never understand why some people think the prequels are better than the Disney-era Star Wars movies. I'll just never be able to understand that. But at the very least, I know there are people out there that do like those things, so I'm not going to rain on their parade. What I don't like, however, is people coming in to ruin someone's love for something and just constantly obsess over hating something that people love. I've gone on Twitter a couple days ago pretty much saying everything that I'm saying now, but bottom line, I'm open to criticism and discussions when it comes to movies, like constructive criticism. Now, there was somebody on Twitter who really didn't see eye to eye with me when it came to The Last Jedi, so his actions are very much what I'm about to say. If you come to me saying that I'm a retard or I should not be reviewing movies just because my opinion on a movie differs from yours, then you're not worth talking to. I'm sorry. It's just, you're not worth getting into a valid argument when it comes to movies, because you don't respect my opinion. Why should I respect yours? If you respect my opinion and are open to constructive criticism and actually having a discussion or dialogue about a movie, then I'm open for it. Just respect my opinion. And with that guy, I blocked him on Twitter because, quite frankly, he was a troll to begin with, and I ain't tolerating any trolls. So sorry for that prologue. Let's actually delve into the spoilers for The Last Jedi. And I actually want to start with the negative thing that even the people that love The Last Jedi like me have an issue with. And that's the Rose and Finn subplot and Canto Bight as a whole. So I don't think I dislike this sequence as much as other people do, because Canto Bight itself is pretty much this city on a planet that's pretty much occupied by the 1% of the galaxy. It's full of all these rich snobs that pretty much profit off the wars. And there's a lot of great material to expand with that in books, comics, and so forth. I know there's a Canto Bight book that came out sometime before the movie, but watching all the Canto Bight sequences, it just makes me wonder, did these guys profit off the Clone Wars? Did they sell weapons to the Separatists of the Republic? Did they profit off the Galactic Civil War when they sold weapons to the Empire and the Rebellion? There's a lot of potential for this planet. I like Canto Bight in concept, but the overall Finn and Rose subplot, while not terrible, really could have been reworked. It's overall kind of pointless. And the thing with the subplot is that they have to try to find a master codebreaker to sneak aboard the Supremacy, which is the ship of Supreme Leader Snoke, because they have a device that can track ships through hyperspace. They managed to locate the Resistance fleet, and the Resistance fleet decides, you know what, if we travel through lightspeed, they're just going to find us all over again, and we're going to run out of fuel. So Finn, Rose, Poe Dameron, and C-3PO C-3PO contact Maz Kanata, who tells them about a master codebreaker that can help them on Canto Bight. And the first thing I thought when watching it for a third time is, why couldn't Maz just do it? Because the very first line of dialogue she says is, "Can I do it? Of course I can do it. But I can't do it because I'm a little preoccupied at the moment." And I'm not exactly quite sure what she's doing. She says it's some sort of union dispute that nobody wants to be involved with. But I just felt like that whole thing was a waste of Maz Kanata and Lupita Nyong'o as a whole. Like, you really dragged in this talented actress to put on the motion capture suit just for that, like, a minute-long sequence with Maz, who I actually thought was kind of a cool character in The Force Awakens. I just didn't think that was really handled very well. And plus, if you had Maz be the master codebreaker, we would have probably seen a little more of her character, gotten to know her a little more, and she could be a little more important of a character. I don't hate the Canto Bight sequence, as I mentioned, because there is a little part of me, there's that millennial part of me. When Finn and Rose are escaping on the space horses, I'm not quite remembering what their names are, but just seeing them wreck up the entire city, that was just like a big fuck you to the 1%, and that, as a millennial, just made me happy. I don't know, even though that sequence had terrible green screen. But I tried to figure out what was the entire point of this whole sequence, and the first thing that popped into my mind was this was just kind of an excuse to get Finn to fight Captain Phasma. I'll get back to her a little bit. But then watching it a third time, it kind of plays into the movie's theme of failures, because Finn and Rose ultimately failed at their goal, just like a lot of the other characters had their own failures in life. But I don't think this particular subplot handled that theme very well. I'm not going to go down the road of, if I made the movie, this is what I would have done. I know I probably have done a little bit of that, especially suggesting to bring in Maz Kanata again, but let's just leave it at that and move on to the other disappointment of the movie, Captain Phasma. I don't even know who to blame when it comes to Captain Phasma, because we were all disappointed with her lack of screen presence in The Force Awakens. But after time, I just thought to myself, now, did Lucasfilm and J.J. Abrams really hype up Captain Phasma, or did we, the fans, hype her up? Because she looked really cool. We all thought she was going to be the Boba Fett of the sequel trilogy, and she definitely is, in the sense that she's in 2 movies in this trilogy and doesn't ultimately do much. I mean, The Last Jedi, she pops up near the end of the movie, and while she does do a little more action in this one, she fights Finn and gets to fire her blaster a couple times, she gets taken out pretty quickly. That fight that they build up in the final trailer doesn't really amount to a lot, and Phasma just kind of dies. No, there's no kinda, because in The Force Awakens they indicate that they threw her in a trash compactor, so you could assume, well, maybe she found a way out. Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie found a way out of the trash compactor in the Death Star, so why not somebody who actually knows the surrounding? But here, there's no blurred lines. Like, it is clear that she is a goner. She is dead. Captain Phasma is done. A total waste of a potentially cool character. But I'm not going to be 100% disappointed on that, because I feel like Captain Phasma, as a character herself, is kind of disappointing, but she's there to serve a purpose for another character, Finn. And this is actually where I'm going to start delving into the things that I loved about this movie, because those are the only 2 negatives that I really have. The Finn and Rose subplot on Canto Bight and Captain Phasma. But in terms of what I loved about this movie, I love how most of the main characters start somewhere and then end somewhere. And usually they're accompanied by another character who individually is not that important, but to that character they are. In The Force Awakens, Finn defects from the First Order, sure, but he's not really wanting to join the Resistance. He wants to leave, and the only reason he even heads to Starkiller Base to deactivate the shields is just to find Rey. He doesn't really care that much about the Resistance. And then in this movie, he starts off wanting to run away again, but throughout the Finn and Rose subplot, Finn starts to realize that it's better to just stay and fight. And the second that he starts to fight Captain Phasma, that's the turning point for Finn, where he's not running away anymore. He is part of the Resistance. He is going to stay and fight the First Order. So in that sense, that's pretty cool. Poe Dameron. In The Force Awakens and in the first bit of this movie, he starts out as a cocky, pilot. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but he's kind of arrogant, he rushes into things, and he feels like his idea of victory is just hopping into an X-Wing and blowing shit up. Because in the beginning of the movie, the Resistance evacuates D'Qar, and the First Order comes in with a Dreadnought Star Destroyer. I was about to say Separatist, because that's the capital ships of the Separatist fleet. But anyway, Poe Dameron leads an attack on the Dreadnought. Once the entire Resistance is evacuated on D'Qar and everyone's safe, Leia tells Poe to get back to the Raddus, which is their capital ship. But Poe ignores her and turns off his comms just to carry out the attack on the Dreadnought. And the attack is very successful. They destroy the Dreadnought and they get away, but they also lose half of their fighters and their entire bombing fleet. So that gets Finn demoted from commander to captain. And then later on in the movie, Leia is taken out of it for a bit. I'll get back to that a little later. And Vice Admiral Holdo, who's played by Laura Dern, takes over command. As a character, Holdo is not particularly interesting, but much like with Phasma, she's important to the development of another character. And in this case, Poe Dameron is very arrogant in not knowing what Holdo's plan is. So he accuses Holdo of being a coward and a traitor once he finds out that she's fueling all the shuttles. But then through a series of events that I'm not going to go too deep into, he soon finds out that the shuttles were used to have everyone else escape to the mineral planet Crate, while she stays behind to try to see that they escape. And it's through this that Poe realizes, as Leia said, you can't solve your problems by getting into an X-Wing and blowing shit up. So by the time we get to the Battle of Crate, Poe leads the ski speeder attack against the walkers, and at a point when they know they've been defeated, Poe realizes that they have to retreat. And there's another point in the movie where Luke Skywalker leaves the base to try to confront the First Order and Kylo Ren by himself, but Poe realizes that Luke is doing this for a reason. Finn is actually the one who's rushing in to saying, we gotta help Luke. Poe stops him and says, no, no, no. He's doing this for a reason. He's doing this so we can escape. And it's through all that that Poe Dameron really proves himself to become a great leader, and I'm really curious to see what they do with him more in episode 9, because that is really great character development for Poe Dameron. Now let's talk about Rose. I actually really like Kelly Marie Tran in this movie. She's very natural, and what I like about her character, Rose, is that she comes from the same basic background as Finn and Rey. She starts out as a nobody. She's part of the Resistance, sure, but she's just a mechanic. She doesn't really get out much. She doesn't really take part in a lot of the action. So when she meets Finn, that sort of sends her off on her big adventure to become a somebody. And that's one of the bigger themes about this movie, is that greatness can come from the tiniest thing. So by the time we get to the end of the movie, she's a true Resistance fighter. She takes part in the ski speeder attack against the First Order walkers. And yeah, just like with Poe Dameron, I can't wait to see what they do with her in episode 9, because I actually really like this character. So now I'm actually going to move on to Snoke, because everyone for 2 years has been debating and just imagining in their mind, who is Snoke? Is he a character we've already seen before? Is he a completely new character? There's just been a shit ton of Snoke theories out there. Most of them are fucking stupid and try to link him to a pre-existing character. Like some people said he was probably Tarkin, the Inquisitor from Star Wars Rebels, Darth Maul, Boba Fett, Palpatine. People are stupid. And the whole time I was just like, I got an idea. What if Snoke is Snoke? And he very much was Snoke, so that proves my theory. And not only is he Snoke, but he's a dead Snoke. Because in a surprising turn of events, Rian Johnson has decided to kill Snoke. And I actually didn't have a problem with this, because when watching the movie, and even in The Force Awakens, his characteristic, he pretty much comes across as another Darth Sidious. So I wasn't entirely on board of seeing another Emperor beat for beat, which I got the impression from Snoke. I mean, Andy Serkis does a great job with the role, and you can definitely tell that Snoke is powerful, and he can be very menacing, but I wasn't too interested in his backstory, which is why I'm very grateful that he got killed, so we can move on to the more interesting villain, Kylo Ren, who throughout the first bit of this movie is so conflicted with whether he's bad or good, and when he kills Snoke, that gets rid of all his conflictions. How this scenario plays out is that Rey is on board the Supremacy, and Snoke orders Kylo Ren to kill Rey with his own lightsaber. At the same time, the Skywalker lightsaber is right next to Snoke, and without Snoke even knowing, Kylo Ren gestures his lightsaber to supposedly kill Rey. Meanwhile, with his other hand, he's using the Force to turn the Skywalker lightsaber, and then he ignites the Skywalker lightsaber on Snoke, cutting him in half, and then Rey and Kylo Ren fight side to side against Snoke's bodyguards, which is an incredible fight sequence. It's one of the best lightsaber duels in the entire saga, just in terms of how well it's grounded and how beautifully it's shot. So you think, oh, Kylo Ren is turning to the light side because he just killed his own master and all of his bodyguards. But he doesn't. Killing Supreme Leader Snoke has really put his mind in the clearing that he's truly a bad seed. I mean, it was cool to have all that conflict with Kylo Ren because it just makes him such a fascinating villain and a very complex villain. But once Snoke is dead, he takes over the role of Supreme Leader, finally being above General Hux because in The Force Awakens they were both equals and they hated each other, and he just turned into a great villain. He really has come into his own as a great Star Wars villain and not just another Darth Vader, which I love how The Force Awakens, that was kind of the idea, that he was trying to be another Darth Vader, and then in this movie he just kind of puts all that away. He doesn't wear the mask, and he becomes his own villain. He is Kylo Ren, and he is a fantastic villain. Now I want to get into something that's really controversial amongst fans, Leia using the Force in space. I don't want to go into this too much. Ultimately, it's great to see Leia actually use the Force outside of sensing where Luke is, or if he's alive, like she did in Empire and Jedi. Return of the Jedi, because now we're going to have to elaborate when we talk about Return of the Jedi or The Last Jedi. We can't simply say Jedi. Take a drink every time I say Jedi. But anyway, in this situation, after the Supremacy and the rest of the First Order fleet has found the Resistance, Kylo Ren and 3 other TIE fighters head to the capital ship Raddus, destroy the entire fighter squadron, and there's that shot in the trailer when Kylo Ren has the bridge of the Raddus locked on with Leia on it, and he's wondering if he's going to fire. He doesn't. It's the 2 TIE fighters next to him that fire proton torpedoes, killing a lot of the Resistance leaders, including Admiral Akbar. So that's kind of sad that Admiral Akbar's gone. But anyway, Leia's the only one to survive because she's floating around in space. But suddenly she uses the Force to pull herself back to the bridge of the Raddus. And people have complained that, oh, Leia would have been dead already because the vacuum of space killed her instantly. And if I were to quote Darth Vader in A New Hope, don't underestimate the Force. It's an energy field that is in all living things, and it surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. Some people are more in tune with the Force than others, and given that Leia's father was Anakin Skywalker, it makes sense that she would be in tune with the Force. And plus, there's the tragedy of Plagueis, who used the Force to bring people to life. So her using the Force to kind of protect herself is not that far-fetched. We've seen other characters that have survived in space throughout the canon, and if we're really gonna bring real-life science into Star Wars, let's just go down an entire laundry list of shit that is not scientifically accurate in Star Wars. Overall, if I had an issue with Leia using the Force, it's that the shot looks kind of goofy. It takes a little getting used to because everyone's made the comparison of it's like Superman or Super Leia, and I can see how it looks goofy, but overall I don't think it's 100% impossible for Leia to have done that. It's not Deus Ex Machina. She has the Force, so it's totally possible. Now let's talk about Luke Skywalker. Mark Hamill in this movie is incredible. Despite whatever disagreements he has about the character when it comes to how Rian Johnson approaches telling the story, he does an excellent job with this role. He's hesitant about training Rey to be a Jedi because of his failures with Ben Solo. And not just the fact that Ben Solo turned to the dark side, but the way it all happened put Luke to shame. He sensed the dark side inside Ben Solo, so he ignited his green lightsaber and was about to strike Ben Solo down, but then he realized that he's looking in the eyes of a boy, a scared boy, and he felt ashamed. And with everyone saying that everything that Luke does in this movie is out of character, I don't see that at all, because everything that they say about Luke in The Force Awakens, and then leading into everything that he does here, it makes total logical sense for him to be doing the things that he's doing. And plus, characters change over time. I imagine that when I'm 56 years old, I'm not going to be the same person that I am right now. So characters do change. But anyway, back to Luke and him being ashamed of almost killing Kylo Ren. Rey senses some conflict within Kylo Ren because the two of them suddenly link minds to each other. They're connected with the Force so they can communicate with each other throughout different parts of the galaxy. It's a really cool idea and introduces another fantastic element of the Force that we haven't really seen before. I mean, it was introduced in Empire Strikes Back, but it's fleshed out even more with The Last Jedi. But anyway, Rey believes that there's still some good within Kylo Ren, and she leaves Ahch-To. Luke stays behind, he does not come along, and Luke decides, you know what, it's time to end the Jedi once and for all. And then he gets a surprise visit. And by surprise, I mean surprise to us, the audience. Yoda. The Force ghost of Yoda shows up in this movie, voiced by Frank Oz, and performed via puppet, not CGI like in the prequels. This was a big surprise, and if I had known ahead of time that Yoda was going to be in The Last Jedi, I don't think I would have been that excited for it, because I'm not too big of a fan of just shoehorning characters that we're familiar with into situations where they don't need to be, but Yoda fit perfectly here. And I guess if there was one Force ghost that they were going to bring back, Yoda was the most logical choice, because you can't bring back Obi-Wan because we can't digitally resurrect two actors from the original Star Wars 2 movies in a row, and you can't bring back Anakin because I don't think people are still willing to accept Hayden Christensen as Ghost Anakin, even though that's probably the only thing they can do. But anyway, Yoda was the best choice. Yoda comes in, gives some words of wisdom to Luke, saying that Ben Solo may be gone, but you can't lose Rey. And he also mentions the key theme to the entire movie, that failure is our greatest teacher. We learn a lot just from failing. And this inspires Luke to actually take action. And when we get to the very end of the movie, Luke makes a sacrifice that I think is just beautiful overall, because he uses the Force to project himself onto Crate to allow the Resistance to escape and fight another day. So he's there to distract Kylo Ren, who does not know that Luke is not actually there, that he's still in Ahch-To projecting himself. Sure, we get cheated out of a lightsaber duel between Luke and Kylo Ren, but I feel like if Luke was actually there, the impact of his death would not have been as effective as it is in the final product, because Luke is not going to give Kylo Ren the satisfaction of killing him. And the way Luke dies, I mean, somebody spoiled this for me beforehand. At first I was just like, you motherfucker. But watching the movie, I wasn't all that mad that Luke passed away. Luke basically musters up all the power that he has to project himself onto Crate, and then his last moment is to look out onto the Ahch-To sunset, see the twin suns that first kicked off his journey on Tatooine, and then he just accepts his fate. He becomes one with the Force, fades away like Obi-Wan and Yoda did, and in the words of Rey, his death felt peaceful and it had purpose to it. He didn't die in vain at all. It's just a beautiful sequence. I absolutely love it, and I feel like it's a great way to send off Luke Skywalker. He did not go out a coward. He gave the ultimate sacrifice so that the rest of the heroes could live to fight another day, and that the legacy of the Jedi could continue on with Rey. And there's just a lot of beautiful shots in this movie to begin with. Like I mentioned, the lightsaber duel between Rey and Kylo Ren versus Snoke's guards is beautiful. When I was watching the sequence, it felt like something that Akira Kurosawa would do if he was given a lot of money, because some of the fighting choreography matches the stuff that I see in something like Yojimbo or Seven Samurai or The Hidden Fortress, which, if you all know, inspired George Lucas for the story of the original Star Wars. And then there's a beautiful shot when Vice Admiral Holdo takes the Raddus after the rest of the Resistance has evacuated and rams it into the Supremacy at light speed. There's 10 seconds of dead silence as the Supremacy is destroyed and the rest of the Star Destroyers are destroyed through the aftershock. It is an incredible sequence, and what I love about it is every time I've seen this movie in the theater, because of the dead silence, you just hear the entire audience go, whoa. And one thing I really love about this movie, and this goes back to one of the themes of the movie, is that greatness can come from nowhere, is that Rey's parents are nobodies. She is not Luke's daughter, she's not related to Obi-Wan, she is not the clone of Palpatine or Anakin Skywalker or whatever the fuck stupid fan theory you people think of. Sorry. She's nobody. Her parents were just traders that sold her on Jakku for drinking money. And it just makes Rey that more unique of a character to me. I don't get the hate for Rey at all. I think Daisy Ridley does a phenomenal job with these movies. And the whole thing that I love about Rey is that she is trying to find her place in the world. Because she has the Force within her, but she doesn't really know what to do with it. She's trying to find out her place within the galaxy. And I just love seeing her on this journey. So to wrap things up, because I've gone on for a long time about this movie, I love The Last Jedi. I'm still trying to debate whether or not I like it better than The Force Awakens, because The Force Awakens is a more familiar Star Wars movie, but it's more tightly edited and it moves faster. The Last Jedi, you definitely feel the length for it being the longest Star Wars movie, but it does so many unique things and takes so many unexpected turns that turn out for the best. So, time will tell. I'll see how I feel about it in a couple months. Maybe when it comes out on Blu-ray, I'll make my final decision. But I love this movie. I've heard a lot of people bitch about Rian Johnson, like, ruining the main character of this film, having terrible humor in this movie, and just ruining the legacy of the Jedi as a whole. And again, I'm like Ryan Gosling in The Notebook. What do you want? Because everything that you accuse Rian Johnson of, George Lucas already did in 3 movies. He ruined the character of Anakin Skywalker. He destroyed the magical feeling of the Force by making it more of a science thing and introducing those fucking midichlorians. And the humor in The Last Jedi, at the very worst, is just kind of eye-rolling. The humor in The Last Jedi never stoops down to the low of the prequels. Jar Jar tripping over shit, getting kicked in the nuts by a pit droid, getting farted on by a space camel. I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to stay on target. I don't get it. Again, going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, I don't get it. I don't understand why. I'll never understand why some of you people think that the prequels are better than this movie, but I'm not going to argue with it. If you think that, hey, think that. Just please respect my opinion and I'll respect yours. I just feel like Rian Johnson delivered such a breath of fresh air with this franchise. I don't think humor is his strong suit. I truly think that he is best at drama and more serious elements and storytelling. Humor, not so much. J.J. Abrams does better with humor than Rian Johnson does. But I love The Last Jedi. It's not my favorite movie of the year, so that'll be a slight spoiler for my best of list. But it's definitely the most unique Star Wars movie out there in a good way. I'm dying to see what happens in Episode 9, and I'm dying to see Rian Johnson's new trilogy of films. Maybe with the upcoming trilogy that Rian Johnson's going to do, this will allow him more creative freedom because he doesn't have to follow up with someone else's work. He can do his own thing, and it doesn't have to be at all connected to the Skywalker saga. So, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of Star Wars, except for the Han Solo movie coming out next year. I'm still on the fence about that, but again, we'll see what happens. And yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything I want to say about The Last Jedi in terms of spoilers. This video has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would, but I had to say everything I had to say and to really elaborate on why I love this movie. So, thank you for watching my spoiler review for The Last Jedi. Thank you for being so patient with it. And I hope you all kind of see where I'm coming from. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Just respect my opinion and I'll respect yours. And don't be cruel. Please do not be cruel when it comes to disagreements. So I will be working on my best of and worst of lists for 2017, as well as my annual wrap-up video where I talk about all the movies of 2017 that I did see but didn't have the time to review. So look for those videos in the next few days. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what your thoughts are on The Last Jedi. What do you think of all the spoiler elements? And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. See you guys in 2018.